Hey, it's Ben Ufana, and I think we're starting about a minute early here. So I'm just getting myself situated, and I'm in northern Idaho at the moment. And I think I have a little guest here. So I have a little with me here today. So she likes to bark at times, and she gets a little excited. So she may hear her at some point, but anyway, hopefully she'll be um, accommodate. But anyway, today I wanted to talk about subject I've been writing about, getting the love that you deserve. And wow, I started writing this chapter some time ago. I mean, it began with I was listening to psychotherapists speak, and someone who's well-known influencer whose name I won't mention, but as I was listening to her presentation, it was actually frustrating me a bit because I felt the lack of depth, that she was just barely skimming over the topic or the issues involved. And that there's so many different components. She was talking more specifically about the deficits that many of us are struggling with, and how these deficits, in many ways, they impact our relationships. Often, it's the fact that we have these deficits, and they prevent us in many ways from relating in any kind of healthy, mature way. And it can, in many instances, have a destructive impact on a relationship. Now, when it comes to relationships, we need to be concerned not only about our own individual deficits, but those of the individuals with whom either we're involved, the person we're seeing, maybe our former partner, to the extent that it's, they're still having, we're still tied to them on some level, especially if you have children with them. Or, as well, any individual that you're hoping to partner with. So, as I was putting this chapter together, it kept growing. And so right now it's up to about 13 pages. And I continue to come up with even more, just examples or insights, understandings that I need to include in this. So I don't know that I'm going to see comments or anything, but you can message me. And so if I happen to leave something out, if you have additional thoughts or input you would like to include or something, there are ways to message me, either through email or through YouTube, Facebook, all that. Messenger, you can get a message to me or something, or if you just want to know more about something. Now, I'm not going to read word for word what I've written here. I mean, it's just too much, too long, too lengthy, and that would be boring anyway. But I am going to refer back to the chapter because it's just not humanly possible to remember such a vast amount of information and be able to relate that in any kind of sequential order that makes any sense. So I'll refer back to what I've written at times, and then I'll jump back on camera, or refocus my attention here, and then it'll give me the opportunity to expound a little more on some of the points I'm making. Another thing too is that I've actually posted this chapter, at least in its current form, on my website. So in the description of the event, you'll see that link. So you could click on that link. You could go to the chapter. You can copy paste it into a Word document, print it out, and then read, because there's a lot to think about here. Now, deficits refer to a lack of capacity or skills. In this case, the lack of capacity and skills that we need to relate, as I was saying before, in any kind of healthy way. And there's such a wide range of these deficits that we need to take into consideration. So, for instance, let's start out with cognitive deficits. Now, cognitive or intellectual deficits can result from many reasons. For instance, if among segments of the population that are not that well educated, for instance, I remember reading an article at one point. And they were interviewing one of the commanders of the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan. And he was talking about how a lot of the younger generations of fighters had never really gone to school. I mean, they had, Afghanistan as a country had been at war since it was invaded by the Soviet Union. And so you have all these boys who grew into men. And so the fact that they didn't have any education, it's in many respects, they just had not developed their mind or their intellectual capabilities. And so because of that, there's this intellectual deficit. And yeah, intellectual deficits can, I know I find it very difficult to relate to somebody if I have to continually simplify everything I'm saying. I have to dumb myself down in a sense in order to relate to the person I'm speaking with. And I've had that experience of being in a relationship and becoming very frustrated after a while because the woman I was seeing at the time just wasn't on the same intellectual level. And I felt broken at the time the relationship ended. But as I was looking back, at this point, especially, I'm very thankful it didn't go any further. So intellectual deficits or cognitive intellectual can happen for so many reasons, like all kinds of things, heavy alcohol consumption, use of other recreational drugs, using pharmaceuticals, even a lot of the psychotropic medications can result in cognitive emotional deficits. Traumatic events of all sorts. We go through traumatic experiences of one form or another, and we're holding all those highly charged emotions, the impressions of those experiences that we've gone through that have caused us a great deal of suffering, and that consumes an enormous amount of bandwidth. And so that can, in many ways, stunt our intellectual development. Fetal alcohol syndrome, birth defects, sometimes some of it's genetic. Some people also are just intellectually lazy, and not really having much motivation to learn or understand things, just they lack that passion for learning. So moving on here, there's emotional deficits. The fact that many of us have never really learned to work constructively with our own emotions. Either we grew up in families that, that wasn't healthy emotional expression, was not in any way modeled for us. And and just our own habits, as we've gone through life and we just didn't know any other way or means through which we could, deal or cope with our emotions, and we were afraid or intimidated by them. So what do? We shut down. We numb ourselves out emotionally. We push those emotions down. We distract ourselves. We do whatever we can to not feel whatever it is that we don't want to be feeling. And in doing so, it's all that stress, all that emotion that we're not processing, it never just goes away. It ends up getting trapped within our bodies. And so when we're holding all this um, undigested, unprocessed emotions, then what happens is we're not able to really process our own emotional responses. We go through different experiences, it elicits an emotional response, and and we need to be able to digest, like we digest the food we eat, our emotional responses. Um, that helps us to digest that interaction, that experience. When we fail to do so, it's like we internalize that unpleasant experience, those conflicts, that arguments or disagreements, whatever, misunderstandings, and it freezes up in our body, and that consumes a huge amount of mental and emotional bandwidth. And so the more bandwidth we have taken up with all this internalized conflict and pain and confusion, misunderstanding, all that, it's the less of us that's going to be here available to relate or to engage with our intimate partner or anyone else, who any other important people in our lives, or anyone that we encounter for that matter. So smartphones and social media is that for many of us these days, our primary relationship is with our smartphones, our tablets, our computers. And these devices and social media, I mean, they've all been highly engineered in many respects to be incredibly addictive, to suck us in. They're designed to keep us, all the notifications that we receive. Um, let me go back a little ways. Way back at the 1890s, Ivan Pavlov in what is residing somewhere in what's now the Russian Federation, did these series of experiments with dogs, where he would ring a bell at the time that it was whenever he was going to feed the dogs. And so as he continued to do this, what happened is, like, every time that the dogs um, realized that they were going to be fed, they would salivate. And so after some time, he discovered that he could ring the bell and not feed the dogs. And it became evident pretty quickly that the dogs were salivating even without being given any food, because that stimulus, which is the ringing of the bell or the sound of the bell, had been paired with the experience of getting fed. So the makers of our people who manufacture our smartphones and tablets and computers and all that, um, they understand these principles. And so as we keep getting these notifications, like every time we get a notification, somebody has um, messaged us on Instant Messenger, we get another text, we get another like on Facebook or Instagram, or somebody shares our post or whatever, and it's conditioning us. So in many respects, we become these little lab rats, where they're just, and it's what you refer to as an attention-based economy. They're not doing that just, for some kind of altruistic purposes. It's not that they have our best interest in heart. I mean, the manufacturers of our devices, of social media, I mean, they all answer to shareholders. And so the objective is to keep us on their platforms as long as possible and to keep us returning over and over and over again. Every time we get one of these notifications, it pulls us back to our phone. And I forgot to turn the ringer down, so hopefully it doesn't ring. I think the phone's in the other part of the room somewhere. But anyway, but the other thing too is that as we spend more and more time on these devices, the way the internet is set up is, it's kind of like when you go into a restaurant, and they want you to eat quickly, and so sometimes they set up the environment and they play music, so it keeps you in this kind of space. You're consuming your food quickly, and you get out the door, and then the next bunch of people can come in, sit up at the table. And so as they with this high turnover, it's just more income for the restaurant itself, for the wait staff, and it's more profitable. And so our social media and the internet is set up in a way so that it predispositions us to scroll and to scan all this overwhelming mass of digital content so rapidly. But the unfortunate thing is, like, our online habits, it's training our brain, our bodies, our minds. And so it's training us in a way so that it's making it extraordinarily difficult for us to focus our attention for any length of time, for us to be present. Our attention just skitters along the surface. We get pulled from one thing to another. And so it creates these massive attentional deficits that can make it extraordinarily difficult for us to be fully present to our friends, our family members, our intimate partners. We need to be honest. Our devices or social media, in many respects, they are an addiction. We are in many ways hooked to our devices and social media, much to our detriment, to the detriment of our relationships. And so we need to be very mindful of our use of these technologies and the impact that it's having upon us. Let's see, what else do we have to cover here? Again, so many of us are operating with profound emotional deficits. Important thing about emotions that many people don't realize is that it's through our emotions that we are able to bond and form attachments. So when we've shut down, when we disconnect, when we're not working constructively with our emotions, I'm not sure how else to put it. It's like we lack the receptor sites. Back when I was in college, there was a young Japanese woman that I spent a lot of time with, but I remember at one point, we were spending so much time together, and I was like, "Do you think we should take this further?" And she was like, thought for a second, and then responded back and said, "Well, if I feel that way, I'll let you know," or something like that. But in many ways, I'm not sure what her exact words are, but in any case, there was such a disconnect emotionally about her. And even though I enjoy the connection, there were times where if I opened up and if I shared something emotionally, I felt like I was talking with a piece of cardboard. There was no, there wasn't that kind of mirroring, that kind of empathetic exchange. There's something about that was missing. So when people or when we shut down emotionally, then it just makes it extraordinarily difficult for us to form any kind of lasting, secure attachments or attachments if we do form them. Because I do know some people who are very numbed out or shut down, and they've been in long-term marriages for decades, but their marriages often lack that depth and that intimacy. And a lot of times they're sleeping in separate beds. They're not physically intimate. They have, what's referred to as sexless marriages, and there's a lot of coldness and disconnect. Maybe they're staying married for the kids because they have children, and they're afraid it's going to harm them if they end up going through a divorce or whatever other reasons. But when we don't process our emotions, again, it makes it so much harder for us to sort through the issues, to bring issues to resolution. And so we tend to remain in very stuck places, not just in our relationships, but in all areas of our lives. It seriously stunts our development. But all those unresolved feelings, the hurts, the resentments, if there's some kind of miscommunication, misunderstanding, betrayals, whatever, we don't process those things. And a lot of times it keeps us locked in this holding pattern. Conversely, the more that you're able to work constructively with your emotions, then you develop this fluidity, and it facilitates your learning and your growth. You're able to take your life experiences and the issues that are challenging you, and it's like you're chewing it up, you're digesting what you're experiencing there. And so that, again, it facilitates learning and growth. You evolve within the context of your relationship. If the relationship is really toxic, if it's causing you so much stress or distress and grief and pain, whatever, the more you're able to process those emotions, then it helps you to disentangle, to let go. It helps to free you. And it also facilitates this, as the healing takes place, you go through a process of evolution so that you come up, you grow, you evolve to healthier partners. Or if you're with an individual who, it's best if they too are growth oriented, but if you're in a, say, healthy enough relationship, and especially if they are growth oriented, then as you are able to work constructively with your own emotions, and if your partner does too, you're able to deepen the bond between you and your partner. You're able to communicate more honestly, more openly, greater depth of communication. You're able to resolve issues, and it just facilitates this healthy progression, so that you keep moving forward together. So let me look back and see what else I want to include today. Yeah. Another thing too is problem-solving capacities, because that's crucial in terms of being able to learn from our mistakes. When we do make a mistake, to acknowledge, if necessary, to make amends, to apologize or take constructive action, to right the wrongs that we may be responsible for. The other thing too is and just if we're not able to If we or our partner are able to identify the source of our problems, then we don't we're not able to bring issues to resolution. So that's so crucial for us. Identify the source of our problems, and then from there to be able to um, define workable solutions. Is it something we can do? Is it something we need to learn to understand ourselves, understand our partners, understand our relational dynamic, our relationship with that individual? Are there certain skills that we need to learn or to develop, not just in the relationship itself, but that are going to enable us to function in all aspects of our lives, to provide for ourselves, to get along better with other people, our friends, family members, um, just all the things that we need to be able to do, and in order to function in our day-to-day lives, which demand so much of us these days. And so so I think I've covered pretty much most of what I wanted to say today. This will give me a chance to go back through. I have quite a bit more to cover here, but I want to save that for future episodes of this series, and series of getting the love you want, or getting the love you deserve. And in any case, so I'm going to leave you with that today. This will give you some to think about. Um,